This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
We're back. The 21.5 Show, professional pilots podcasting for your listening pleasure. On your commute to work, in the car, in the train, in the back,
plane,
in the back of an MD-80, perhaps. Who knows? I don't know. Are there any more of those out in the U.S. air system?
There are some.
Okay. All right.
Charter ones.
Max, typically when I talk to the FAA, I get some nerves, maybe a little flushed in the face.
Fumbling through your wallet.
Exactly, yeah.
Looking for your certificate.
None of that today. We had a chance to speak with the former FAA Administrator, Billy Nolen. He is with Archer Aviation, a pioneer in the EVTOL space, electric air taxis. You've seen them at NBAA. You've seen the ads in probably flying magazines. I don't know a ton about it.
No.
It was super exciting to
To
chat
learn a
with
ton.
him, find out where we're at, who can fly them.
All I know is I want one.
I know. Yeah, that's the theme of our entire interview, Max. We've got this guy, and Max just keeps asking questions about when can I get one? I'd
Now,
like to buy one.
How much is this going to cost? What certification do I need to fly it?
Exactly. So pretty typical. But I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. Billy is great. We had a chance to chat with him. Besides the air taxi stuff, we did talk a little bit about what Archer's up to, and then also got a chance to get some insight from him about the FAA process when it comes to things like aircraft certification. We got to ask a couple questions about the pilot mental health reform, age 67. And
All the things.
We got a story out of him, too, so I think you're really going to enjoy it. Let's jump right in. All right, Max, we are so excited today to be joined by Billy Nolen, former FAA Administrator, current Chief Safety Officer for Archer. He's an expert in the EVTOL space. We're excited to learn a little bit. Billy, we had all these talking points for you today, but then we were looking at your resume, and we saw that you flew the MD-80, which is one of our favorite airplanes. So I think we're just going to talk about the MD-80 for an hour.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
But you got to throw in the 7.5 and the 7.6 in there. Those are pretty amazing as well.
Max and I spent a lot of time. We both flew for American Eagle, so we spent a lot of time in the jump seat of the MD-80. I'll tell you some funny stories later. But anyways, welcome to the program. Lots to cover with you today. So excited to learn more about the electric future that's hopefully headed our way, and learn a little bit about your time at the FAA and hear what Archer's up to. So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Billy, you've been in aviation for a while. Can you give us just I don't know if it's possible to summarize in just a couple of minutes, but give us your background in aviation if you can.
Sure. Well, let's see if I can do it. 120 seconds here. Grew up, born in Alabama, lived in New York, finished high school in California, joined the Army right out of high school. Was going to college at night, started out my flying career as an Army helicopter pilot. From there, went to fixed wing. In the late 80s, airlines were hiring in a major way. I joined American Airlines as a pilot and proceeded to spend the next 26 and a half years there. Retired from there as an executive and also as an international captain on the Boeing 757 767. Maintained the qualification, qualified and current throughout the entirety of my career with American. From American, I went to Washington, D.C., was at Airlines for America for 3 years, then headed over to Australia with Qantas for just shy of 2 years, went up to Canada, was with WestJet. I did a 3-month sabbatical and then went to the FAA, where I started off as the Social Administrator for Aviation Safety, and then was asked by the White House to step into the role of acting administrator when Steve Dixon stepped down. I did that for nearly a year and a half, and after 20 years in government service, I was ready to get back to private industry, and lo and behold, I joined Archer Aviation, EVTOL, something I never thought about, but the last 8 months have been some of the most exciting of my professional career.
Wow. Well, that is quite a resume.
Yeah, it is. Very varied. That's awesome.
So here is my level of knowledge of EVTOLs. I go to NBAA base every year, and I see a couple of different models parked there. Yeah. And in the static display, I go, wow, that's super cool, but that's got to be 20 years away. Like there's no way this is happening, next week or anything like that. But the models are there every single year. So I mean, it looks like they're making progress. So for any of our listeners that maybe aren't following what's going on, get us up to speed on where EVTOLs are.
Yeah, so for those who have followed some of the work that we did during my time at the FAA, it was called, Rolling with Captain Nolen was kind of, we had to play on that. And I wind up putting out a piece every week for the nearly 45,000 men and women who make up the FAA. And as we started to talk about, and the FAA has been in the space for a while, right? The FAA back in 2018 stood up the Center for Emerging Concepts and Innovation, or CC, to look at what this new and novel technology, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, or EVTOLs, drones and multiple sizes of drones that beyond visual line of sight, all these things that have crept into the lexicon of modern aviation. So when you think of electric air taxis, if you will, that's probably an easier way. EVTOLs, it can be a tongue twister at time.
Yeah.
Think about what it does. And here at Archer, our motto is to unlock the sky. So imagine now that one is in a major congested city, New York, Chicago, elsewhere, Sao Paulo, Brazil, you name it, right? And your ability to go from the airport, let's take Newark, and get to Midtown Manhattan, right? On any given day, that takes you roughly about an hour 15 to an hour 30 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, depending on traffic, right? You're moving about 25 miles an hour. What if you can get in an electric air taxi and be there in 15 minutes? So that's really, at least our model, what it's kind of designed to do is something that's fully electric. In our case of Archer Midnight, it takes off like a helicopter, flies like a transition to forward flight, flies like an airplane, transitions back into vertical flight, and lands like a helicopter. That means you can get into confined spaces. You can land on, current heliports that are out there today. Some of those can be mixed use. Eventually there'll be charging capability that'll be added. So this electric air taxis we've come to the point in time with battery technology, with electrical propulsion, that allows us to reimagine how we live and how we move. I don't know where the two of you live, but Archer is headquartered in San Jose, California. So just imagine getting from San Jose across the bay to, say, Oakland, Richmond, or across, the other way to Mill Valley, right? The kind of time, that's a 2-hour undertaking at best sometimes, right? You can now do that in 15 to 20 minutes, right? So as you start to see all of that happening, so technology has brought us there vis-a-vis the battery, the regulatory framework is catching up. There's still some more work to be done there. But this is when we talk about electric air taxis and electrification. This is how far we come. And we've gotten to the point where, as I like to say, where science fiction has become science fact.
It's funny, Max and I both fly business jets right now.
Yeah.
And so for us, all of the time savings is for the passengers are when they arrive and then when they land, right? They can get in, they can drive right up to the jet, they get on. Once we're in the air, we're not really flying faster than airliners. The time savings isn't really the air part, right? It's the ground part. And kind of what you're describing is the opposite, because now it actually is the time savings is the transportation in the air, right?
It is. And it's the transport, because, you think of that time, let's say your family, and again, I use, New York, you can use Chicago, you use wherever, right? And you say, look, we're heading out on a vacation, right? Or I'm a businessman and I routinely, get from downtown Chicago out to O'Hare, right? And the time that takes. So now if we could give you back not only minutes, but in some cases hours of your time on either end of your journey, right? That becomes a proposition that most people, would easily sign up for. And you know what? I've been traveling the world, both as the FAA Administrator and also now in the last 8 months. And what you're finding is there's a level of hunger and desire for this new technology that sort of bridges it all together. And, as you mentioned, right, you put them on the jet and you go fly up and take off and you're flying at whatever speed. But, traffic in our congested cities is moving on average at about 25. My car has a computer, right? So at the end of it, it'll tell me what my trip distance was or what my average speed. And it's interesting, even with freeways and things like that, it tells me that my average speed yesterday was 35 miles an hour. So, Archer Midnight, fly up to 100 nautical miles, pilot plus 4 passengers and a carry-on bag at 150 miles an hour. So imagine now just being able to go, right, 6 times the speed of typical that you're doing on a road, side streets and highways, right? This is our ability to give people back time in their lives. And time is the one thing we can never get back, right?
That's it.
So that's a cool aspect to it.
One of the things Dylan and I like to say about business jets is there's only one reason we all don't have one, right?
Yeah.
Just one. It's very simple, right? Yeah. And so with this technology, is this going to be accessible to everybody, or is this?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're speaking on, you're taking the words. It is, right? So you think about, I think about 3-4 things here for the audience, right? Number one, it is sustainable, means it contributes to decarbonization. Now, to be frank, to be honest, right, all of commercial aviation only contributes about 2 to 3%, right, to the carbon footprint of the planet. But still, we're all doing our part. But this is one is fully electric, so it's carbon neutral. It is very quiet, so it's almost 100 times less the noise signature of a conventional helicopter. I should know I've got about 4,000 hours of helicopter time myself, so I can raise my hand. I'm a bit of an expert there. It is fully accessible, right? By that I mean we're starting out something, in the early phases, and when you've got low density. You're talking probably Uber Black kind of prices, but as you get to scale, as we think about it, and our goal here at Archer is to come to market. If all the pieces fall into place, we want to come to market in 2025. And then as we get to scale and you start seeing widespread usage of this, you'll also see the cost, start to drop as well.
That makes sense. Okay, so I think we can kind of conceptually grasp what we're talking about here. I think for the pilots that are listening to this show, what comes to mind for them is like, well, what's this actually going to look like? How are we going to do this?
Who's going to fly it?
Who's going to fly it?
How do I fly one?
VFR? Are there going to be new, EVTOL routes?
Yeah.
What is this actually going to look like in the airspace system?
Some really good questions there, guys. So one of the things, you're my time, the FAA's been working on this a while now. So I give all due credit to the incredible men and women at the FAA. So when I got there in January of 2022, and certainly when I stepped into the role of Act Administrator, I had 3 fundamental goals that I felt not only I wanted to achieve, and working together with the leaders at the FAA and the men and women who make up the agency. Number one was maintaining the FAA's role as its North Star has always been about safety, and that it has been really the one agency that people look to on a global basis that says they continue to excel. Number two was the continued expansion or proliferation of safety management system, SMS. Certainly 121 operators, SMS has been there a while. That's now been extended to OEMs and being extended to Part 91 operators, air tour operators, et cetera. So we're saying you've got one level of safety that encompasses everybody who sort of operates in the NAS. And lastly, I thought about how can we as an agency enable all that comes beyond the jet age, right? And we think about, the careers that the 3 of us have had, and all of those who are listening who are flying in a conventional jet today. So you need kind of 4 and maybe 4 key enablers to make EVTOLs, electric air taxis, a reality. Number one, you need a certification pathway, right? And the FAA has settled upon, Part 14 CFR, Part 23, 2117B. That's a long winded to say, using what's called a powered lift rating. And then, so that's out there. It's pretty sad. Archer we received our G1, our G1 certification, if you will. Our airworthiness criteria has been approved by the FAA. We're working through, these are just the steps along the certification journey. We're working through our means of compliance. We're working on our cert plans. We're working on very, very close coordination oversight from the FAA as we go through this certification process. Our prototype is flying almost every day in Salinas, California. And we're continually expanding the envelope as we go through the testing regime there. We are in the process of building 6 fully conforming midnight aircraft that we will start as we get into the second half of this year. We'll go into what's called 4-credit flight testing. So that's the certification, and we'll continue to make progress through that, all the certification journey, rigorous as it is, right? And at the other side of that is our expectation we'll receive a type certificate for the aircraft. We are an OEM, so we'll receive a production certificate at one time. We'll receive an airworthiness certificate that says, it's fit to fly in. And at some point, we'll also be an operator, so we'll receive an AOC, an aircraft operating certificate, so that we could fly commercially, right? So that's the certification journey. The number 2, the FAA has to establish an operation framework for how the pilots will be trained, what that looks like, right? How the operators will operate and what that means, right? And so last year, what they drafted a special federal aviation regulation, or an SFAR, outlining some of these steps. They solicited public comments. Those comments are all received on the 16th of August. It closed out last year. The FAA is in the process of adjudicating or going through and satisfying all of those comments with the expectation that they will finalize that SFAR, that operational rule set. My expectation is something in the September-October timeframe of this year. So that comports to our stated plans of being in the market, getting our certification, being in the market by 2025. So that's the operational framework, right? That's, yet to be finalized, but is well underway and well in work. Number 3, you need the ability to integrate it into the national airspace, right? And so how does it fit? On average, you've got 45 to 50,000 commercial flights a day that are operating today. You got business flights that are operating today. So as we come to market in the first few years, let's say 25, 26, you'll see a slow, think of tens to hundreds and then ultimately to thousands, as you get to, 28 and beyond, or maybe in 2030 and beyond. So, in the first wave, when it's just a low density, we're just talking maybe tens of these in cities around the world, think New York, Chicago, elsewhere. You can use current VFR type routes. This is kind of what the FAA has been thinking about, right? Let's use daytime VFR routes. You already do that with helicopters today. And let me just stop and say for the audience, the universe of helicopters, there are about 50,000 helicopters in the world, right? So you just think about how they operate today. So there won't be suddenly this, we're overly taxing our national air traffic infrastructure. We won't be. As we continue to ramp up, NASA's been working this issue, the FAA's been working this issue. Will there be some additional equipment requirement for electric air taxis, right? Chances are there might, but they are working through that part very diligently. So that's that whole sort of integration with air traffic control. The FAA has published some guidance around vertiports in terms of safety areas. So think of a conventional helipad with maybe one or two other added things you would add to that. Think of charging infrastructure that you need to charge these things, right? And working with airports and cities and municipalities, etc. So all of that work is ongoing by our teams, by the FAA teams, right? So that work is on the way, not only here in America, but just around the globe, right? No one really wants to be left behind here. And then lastly, you kind of think about, and I mentioned vertiports already, it again is going to be this coming together, working with at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, with communities. So we're talking with governors, with mayors, with airport, all of that is kind of the body of work that is ongoing even as we speak, because this is really moving at speed, right? I don't know if you caught it, but China did just a few months back certified the EHang 216L, which is a fully autonomous EVTOL that can capable of carrying 2 people, not a very long distance, but capable of carrying 2 people, right? So we're seeing that things are moving, right? And our challenge as a country is certainly not to be left behind when it comes to technology. So we're working diligently, the FAA and really it's the whole of government. The administration stood up what they call an interagency working groups. So coming together under the leadership of the Department of Transportation with the FAA on point, but others, Commerce, Homeland, TSA, all these agencies working together to say, what do we need to do on a national level to enable electric air taxi, electrification, of air vehicles, and then how does that all work together in terms of our whole national infrastructure? So, I mean, that's a mouthful that I said there, but there's a lot that goes into making all this happen.
So, are you guys the furthest along in this whole process you just described? Would you say?
We're pretty far along. There's a couple others out there, from a competitive basis. At a macro level, you want this industry to succeed. Market kind of picks, chooses winners and losers, sort of like, standing up an airline, right? What you want is a strong regulatory framework. We're marching as fast as we can. There's obviously one or two others that are marching very quick. And there are others in various stages of what I call their certification journey, right? Which is a rigorous one. We, first and foremost, what you say is number one, when we're certified, we'll be certifiably safe. And then we'll do all the things that we need to do to make this a commercial reality here. And our expectation is we can get that done by next year.
So I think for, the pilots that are listening right now, they're like, at least this is my impression. It's like, oh, this would be so cool to fly one.
Yes.
I'm a fixed wing person. I don't have any rotor experience.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the typical, like right now we do, you learn to fly, then you're a flight instructor, maybe you go to the regional airlines and kind of up. Do you see the air taxi as sort of like a new stepping stone to something? Or what kind of pilot do you think is going to
And like if I want to buy one myself and go fly it, like trade in my conventional light airplane and I want one of these now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I think both of you have probably been to Oshkosh, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So you see, you got lots of stuff there that you can go buy, right? That's not necessarily the Archer model. There are those in the space who are advertising they want to go make something that they could sell on an individual basis. You went out and buy your Cessna or your Piper or whatever, your airplane of choice. We see the model as Archer being principally at both an operator and OEM. We will be, selling these to entities, be it airlines or et cetera, right? We already have an announced, partnership with United Airlines, and we have one of our other big partnerships. It was Stellantis, the maker of the Jeep, and Maserati and others, right? One of the world's, premier auto manufacturers is going to help us in terms of getting to scale in terms of our manufacturing side of the house, right? We got a factory that is being built just about 30 miles to the east-southeast of Atlanta, Georgia. So back to your point, right? So how does this all work? So if I'm a pilot, what I've found now, I probably have flown during my time as administrator, 7 different I've flown the simulators for probably 6, 7 different companies they're offering, right? And you get in, and one of the first things I had to sort of unlearn was everything I knew as a helicopter pilot with nearly 4,000 hours in helicopter. There were some things I just had to kind of unlearn. The ease with which it is to fly, there's still a level of regimen that the FAA will require, the kind of, skill sets, that you need to do from sort of a training standard. But the ease of flying an EVTOL, I found it really, really amazing relative to the early days when I started out in a Hughes 300 and then flew the Army UH-1 and a Bell Jet Ranger, right? So you could have either. I could take the two of you. And, you could come out to Archer and you could get in our simulator. I venture to say you be flying the thing inside of about 15 minutes. Now, there's still another whole sort of, course you go through to get everything the FAA will say you need, right? But that's just how easy it is, right? We've got incredible, fly-by-wire flight controls. Our midnight aircraft is a thing of beauty. And of course, I'm saying that in a very biased way, but it's still a thing of beauty, right? Is that you got something that looks amazing. We've got Garmin instrumentation. We've got a combination of, Safran and Honeywell for auto flight and flight control systems. We're using, others for the carbon fiber, composite. So this, but to come back to your question, right? This will be another opportunity when we think about young men and young women who want to get into aviation, right? Who starts out maybe with a commercial license. The FAA still needs to finalize what that looks like. But let's say you need a commercial pilot's license. You got 500 hours. Don't quote me on any of that because the FAA, again, is still in the process there. And maybe it will be some requisite number of hours to get a powered lift endorsement, right? You'll wind up needing a powered lift endorsement on your commercial license. So once that's finalized, we'll just have a final what that looks like, what the training standards will be, what the requirements will be. But imagine now, you're at Riddle, you're at Purdue, you're at University of North Coast, Southern Illinois, or you're at another flying school. And now here's another opportunity for you to, not only as you build hours, and I think it's pretty cool for anyone who's ever flown a helicopter, you kind of know how cool that can be in terms of the flying, and in some cases in terms of lifestyle, especially as one building hours, that becomes another pathway to get to the work that, the three of us have done and that we're out there flying jets for a living.
So I'm trying to think of this as like the first like commercial or like a commercial off the shelf drone I got, maybe 10 years ago, and I flew, and the controls were kind of like, oh man, and it took me, there was a big learning curve. Max's 14-year-old son now has the latest DJI drone. And it's unbelievable what he can do with that drone with like zero aviation experience, right? And there's so much technology with the GPS and sensors and everything else that it's like he's doing stuff I could never imagine doing, So I kind of envision there's a lot of that in kind of the EVTOLs, right? A lot of tech.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of tech built in. You think of the fly-by-wire, and our model Midnight aircraft has 12 propellers, right? Six on the back, six two blade on the back, six 5 blades on the front, right? So. But you get in this, you've got levels of control, you've got envelope protection, right? You still have the same, crosswind limitations, you've got environmental limitations as you would in any aircraft that any of us, on this channel would fly, right? But the ease of which it takes to get in and be able to fly the thing, to your point, you can take a kid out there, and I kid you not, you could take probably a 7 or 8-year-old and put him on this. Now, would he or she have the capacity to do all the other thinking that we need to do to fly it? Probably not. But from just pure flying it, kids would be pretty good at this.
Is there a collective, or like how, or what are the? Can you briefly tell us?
So we've got two in this one. Yeah, you got two size stick controllers for a combination of directional control, power control. So there are no rudder pedals in the Midnight aircraft. So you've got these two combination of these two for your power inputs, your directional inputs, your other controls.
Interesting. So it's sort of like airplane meets like a heavy equipment, like a tractor, or not a tractor, but like a tank style.
I'm thinking more of like a drone, controller, but it's
sticks.
Sticks, and the same.
Well,
when
you think of up, down, left, right, you're making an input in a computer, you're making that, and you've got this fly-by-wire, this connectivity, right? That is providing a lot of input of what it is you want to do.
If anyone hasn't seen what the Midnight looks like, this is my impression. You tell me how close this is. It looks like a Cirrus meets a V-tail Bonanza meets an Osprey.
Yeah, see, I wasn't quite getting that, but
well, I mean, is that
we're looking at a picture of it right now?
I mean, it's sort of
well, I got a picture of Matt's is a little bit of that. We wanted to. I say this. I've been at Archer now. I'm in my 8th month here, and I think when I go back to our founder, Adam Goldstein, right? You look at the team when they're designing it. They wanted the public to immediately have this sort of visceral impact when they saw it. Something that really sort of tugs at you in an emotional way. So you walk up to it and you say, "Wow." That's a pretty, cool, some say menacing, use whatever, adjective that you want to use. It is an incredible, not only from the looks of it, but it's designed truly around the pilot will be in a, fully state-of-the-art with state-of-the-art controls, right? But we've thought about even more so from a passenger experience. So you walk up and you look at these contoured seats. You've got a side panel. You walk up and it's got your name and say, hey George, hey Billy, welcome to your flight and your city where you're going, and the time it takes to get there. So we thought all of that, the visibility outside. So everything you think about from a conventional helicopter experience, minus the noise, right? With really an inviting environment that I think experientially, as people come to experience Midnight, the word you're kind of left with is wow.
Yeah. Let's take a time out from our conversation with Billy to talk about another friend of ours, Timothy P. Pope, who's a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance strategies for professional pilots on the Pilot Money podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. All right, back to Billy. Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're boarding a helicopter, usually the rotor's spinning, right?
Yeah.
For these, the propellers don't need to be spinning, right?
They don't need to be spinning. That's right.
A lot
Exactly.
of the kind of the anxiety
Absolutely.
of the boarding process, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and there's no APU, there's no noise. It's just sitting there. Like, hey.
That's right. So you come in, it's very quiet. Now, I could go back a little bit of an anecdote from my Army days, and that's going back a couple of days, where you walk in and I remember I was flying for this lieutenant general, 3-star Army general during a time when I was in Korea, and they would say, all right, Eagle One, my call sign was Eagle One, we're on our way, the blades are coming, you've got this requisite wop wop and all of this noise and the downwash and everything you think about it, you've got heads down as you go to approach. So you have none of that. You sort of walk up to it, the motors are off, but they start almost instantaneously, right? And they shut down just as rapidly.
Right.
So that's another one of those, to your point, you're making an added experience from the passenger aspect, right? That makes this even more compelling.
Let's talk a little bit about the safety and the design. I mean, you mentioned there's 12 motors on there, okay? So the dreaded, 11 engine or motor approach maybe not be that difficult, but when you guys think of this, you obviously you've got new factors to consider. What happens if there's a battery issue, electrical issues? Talk about some of the things that you guys have had to think about.
Yeah, so we've got some incredible. If I talk a little bit, one of the things certainly that drew me to Archer was, and I'm not this takes away nothing from any of the other EVTOL companies and where they are in their journey, right? But this one, I was just, fascinated by not only the team, I found that Adam Goldstein's vision was a very compelling one for me. He's got a deep bench of executives and folks who know the business. Our head of powertrain was head of powertrain at Tesla. It's been at Apple. Our chief operating officer, chief engineer, between the two of them, this is their 8th full-scale EVTOL that they've been involved with.
Oh, wow.
Our chief commercial officer has helped stand up Uber Elevate, right? So we got that kind of, the leadership team. And you walk around, if you come to, our headquarters in San Jose, you would immediately feel this sense of buzz, this sense of excitement that say, we're really on the cusp are doing something really, really great, right? And when you listen to Senator Nelson, the NASA administrator, he talks about Artemis with such passion. But the same thing is here and now, without having to go to the moon. There's a level of excitement in terms of what you could do. So if I go back to the whole safety continuum, right? Think about a conventional helicopter today. You've got a problem with your main rotor, you're in a pickle. You could be in a pickle, right? Yeah. If you got a problem with your tail rotor, you could be in a pickle. The design of Midnight is designed to zero out those what we call single points of failure. With 12 rotors, 12 propellers, you can have multiples of those that fail and still have capability. Our aircraft, it has a conventional wing with movable ailerons and rudder, so you've got the ability to also glide, right? So you've got these double, triple redundancies that are engineered and architected into the aircraft itself that provides those added layers of safety, and then no matter what company there is, all of us will have to go through what is arguably a very rigorous certification process. You've got to demonstrate your means of compliance with anything. You've got to demonstrate that your vehicle can operate throughout the envelope as you've described it in your cert basis. You've got your crosswind limits, your environmental things, right? All of those are the kinds of things when we get into our 4-credit flight testing. So what I'd say that when it's all said and done, and once you've got that type certificate, you can rest assured that you will have met that level of safety that the public has rightfully come to expect.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting. It's to wrap my head around some of the changes that we get of what where we've got to get to. But then in the same point, you're saying, there's no single points of failure. That's great. I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, I haven't spent a lot of time around helicopters, but to me, it seems like
just
that makes a lot of
take
sense.
the three of us. You talked a lot about. We started off talking about the MD-80, right?
Yeah.
You can think it's McDonnell Doug, it's DC cable, right? As we used to
Yeah.
kind of say back in the day, right? It's built, but a lot of things. So think of an airplane. You've got hydraulics, you've got pressurization, you've got pneumatics, you've got everything else that sort of happens on the airplane, all the requisite systems. I've been to factories and seen airplanes stripped down to the skin. You just see the utter complexity of it all, and all of those have the potential to be a point of failure. So it's how you architect, how you design, and you start to think about we've come so far in terms of our ability to engineer and design out those sort of single failure points. An MD-80, you got two engines. You lose. Of course, you can. Can you fly on a single engine? Yes, you can. Can you land on a single? Yes, you can. Right, but you still have lost one. Right here, so you think about that. That's your order of magnitude removed from having a single propeller and a single tail rotor, right? So as you think about that from a safety aspect, you've got a lot more things working in your favor on the safety side.
I have a question about, one of the biggest obstacles to any segment of aviation is the cost, kind of like we mentioned before.
Yeah.
So are these going to cost, can you just give us a ballpark kind of, not necessarily what the number is, but are these going to be more expensive than a helicopter of similar capability? And or what about like the private version? Are they going to cost more or less than airplanes, or more accessible to pilots? Or what do you think about that?
Well, they will be accessible. So the cost will be less than, you put an order of, if you go out and buy any other sort of four-place that has a pilot and four passengers. You can just think about what's in the market today. If you're going to think of a Bell or anything else, right? Sure. Or, Aerospatiale, you pick the number, Airbus, whomever, right? So we're talking, so we're much, much less than that. But I think the bigger question, though, is how accessible it is to the flying public. Ultimately, that's what you really got to get to, right? Can you have a compelling price point that meets your cost, but you can offer, when someone says, you know what, I prefer to go, yes, I will go take an electric air taxi I'm making this from LA to Long Beach, LA to Ontario, LA to Laguna Niguel. You can just think of that, or from San Jose to Berkeley, right? And I'm just throwing those kind of hypotheticals out there, right? So our design, we have thought about this in a way is, how do you make it accessible? How do you get that to a point where you're virtually, our goal is to get down to where you're at UberX prices, right? As you get to scale, as you start really, is that in year one? No, it's not in year one, because you've just got a few of these things flying. But as you really start scaling up, you will see the prices, come down.
So does it ever get to a point where we have one of these, like everybody has one in their driveway, or when they're autonomous and things like that? Is that really the future of this?
I think if you look out there, right? So you look at the partnerships that we have. So we partner. Boeing is a big partner of ours, and Boeing has done some incredible work on the autonomous side. Whisk, the EVTOL company that's now owned by Boeing. They're working to come to market to be fully autonomous. Will it happen? We think maybe that's the end of the decade, but it will happen. China is already doing it, right, with EHang. Now, what one thinks about that's a story for a different day. But I'm saying, so you've got these things. We believe that as we come to market, being there with a pilot there and providing the public that level of comfort, it's probably a good first step as you progress your way. Does it get cheap enough so that you've got your own sort of private electric air taxi in every driveway? Look, there are people out there in the market, and I was at Oshkosh not this past year, but the year before, right? And there's a couple of operators that's exactly what they're kind of thinking of. Again, not Archer's model, but there are people who are thinking, is this a one place, two place, and is at a price point that, I'm not sure what that price point is, but folks are thinking along those lines.
Right. But going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, let's say you take your average helicopter right now, your Bell that maybe can hold 4 people and a pilot, to go 50 miles, and then what maybe the Midnight could do is, what's the percentage of the operating cost, would you say, comparison? Do you guys have that data yet? Do you kind of understand?
We do. I mean, that's not something we are public at this point in time, but we do have the data. And when I say our goal is to, you're starting out that Uber Comfort, Uber Black level, but over time, as you get the scale, you're trying, we are looking to get that so that you're down around Uber X as you've got, you start to have mass, and that's one of the reasons we've had these good partnerships. Let me talk a little bit about, so Archer Midnight itself. We didn't say some of the numbers, right? Here's something that's got a base, empty weight of 5,500 pounds. So you got 1,000 pounds of carrying capability. That's a pilot plus 4 passengers and a carry-on bag. Could be a pilot plus 3, depending on the number of bags and where you're going, right? If you're coming off of an international trip versus domestic, etc. It can carry that up to 100 miles at 150 miles an hour. So that's with today's battery technology. So batteries are improving on the order of about 5 to 7% per year. But we are coming to market with what we are certifying today, right? And we've been on this journey for a few years now, right? So that's where we're coming. So even as we start coming to market, and what you'll see is this, you've got this annual rate of growth, and battery technology continues to advance. We're seeing it both on the EV side for cars and other road going vehicles. But so you'll only see that continue to evolve and get better in the years to come as well on the EVTOL side.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right, we're going to hit timeout for just a second, Billy. Sure. Anything else you want to hit on EVTOL or Archer before we shift gears?
No, I say, stay tuned to this space. It is exciting, and it is exciting not only for us, Archer, as a company, but for America, right? If you think about, SpaceX, you think, Elon's Occupy Mars, you think about, NASA and the Artemis project, right? This EVTOLs is an opportunity for us to win, if you will, the airspace race of how we move, right? We're all pilots on this channel, right? So some communities have lost essential air services. As we start to reimagine what the future of air travel look like, this is something that gives me a whole lot of excitement. And I didn't get this excitement because I'm an Archer. I was this excited when I was at the FAA and was very instrumental in helping, bring a lot of this, to the forefront. So I'm pretty proud of that. So EVTOLs are, they're here to stay. And this space, we're going to look back in a year's time and go, wow, we were there when it all sort of broke loose.
It sounds like you're going to get one.
Yeah.
You keep asking
I'm
questions
excited.
about buying one. It sounds like you want one.
About it. Well, I saw the Black Fly, which was when they flew it at
Oshkosh. That's exactly
that talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you look at that thing, you're like, oh my God.
And your 14-year-old son can fly it.
Yeah,
he's already
incredible.
got 50 hours of drone. We're good.
I think how much easier would it have been to land that thing on that muddy dirt strip that we landed on last week in my plane versus just.
Yeah.
But what the thing that blows my mind is you talk about the tech and what's going into certifying this airplane and what it can do and all this, and then I think about, there's the 737 MAX is in certification right now. Literally still takes incandescent light bulbs, like this archaic, and it's this whole thing when you look at certification as a whole, and what a crazy thing it is, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just
what I would describe, and I thought about this a lot. Every day that I was both, the Associate Administrator for Safety and I was the FAA Administrator, you wake up every morning and you say, are we doing the best we can for the American people? That was the one question I asked myself every day. How are we doing in our national airspace system? And I saw every general aviation accident, every incident that happened, everything that happened pretty much, almost anywhere in the world that, impacted aviation. I thought about it and it came across my desk virtually every day. So you wake up and you think about this from a certification. The FAA is pretty good at what it does. I want to see them, things like getting reauthorized and making sure they have the resources that they need. But you guys make good points here. It's, aviation is it's very intolerant of mistakes, right? And very intolerant of error, right? So there's this level of rigor that's built into the certification process by design. What I used to always say is, when you put the first paying passenger on board, right, the threshold is pretty doggone high. You can go out and do something by your own, and even then, my heart goes out to every general aviation pilot because you want them to have that same sense that we as professional pilots have, right? And that's truly the role of the regulator. Work together, find ways to be agile and to adapt, but never yield on the safety case.
Yeah, it's hard because the FAA is in such a tough position in a couple of things. We could talk, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but with certification, the certification standards and the process of certifying a new airplane is so rigorous and so extensive to uphold that level of safety you discussed. But then the flip side of it is, the cost and the time and the rigor of that process, does that prevent the best technology or safer technology from coming to market at all or soon enough because of how rigorous and extensive it is? Like it's this double-edged sword, and it's hard. I'm just curious what your thought is being.
Yeah, it's an absolute fantastic question, right? When you think about that, and is there some sort of trade-off? I would go back and argue that if you think, right, so you go back to this point, the Center for Emerging Concepts and Innovation, with the notion of saying, okay, I come in, I'm Bill, and say, hey, I got this new idea for an EVTOL. What do you think? In a way, the FAA's got a way of assessing, do I have the technical expertise? Do I have the background? Do I have the engineering prowess to go bring something like that to market? And to the extent I'm just a cool guy with an idea on a piece of paper, and I might be an engineer, but I have no experience in this whole certification pathway, then they may want more information before I'm sort of handed off to this, the certification service to start down this process, right? So I always say, if you look at any aviation museum, right, there's a lot of things that are on what I call the museum floor that never made it out the door, right? They were cool concepts. I remember being at Fort Rucker, Alabama, way 1,000 years ago, and you go over to the museum and you saw every kind of permutations of helicopters that one could imagine. And many of them, again, never saw the light of day. They seem good. They seem to come off the design board, but maybe there was an inherent design flaw in those or something that they just couldn't make it work. But we've gotten smarter. Now, one of the things I have to say, and I give kudos to the FAA for, is moving to a performance-based approach, right? One could be overly prescriptive. I make just a simple example and say, I build a mousetrap, right? And I could you tell me I've got the technical expertise to build a mousetrap, or I can tell, no, I don't care what expertise you have. I want you to only build it by these 10 steps, right? That's a prescriptive way of doing it versus saying, you come back, tell me give me the design, the outcome that I need to achieve, and then allow me to go and do it and say that I've matched that and I've got an equivalent level of safety of what you want to achieve on the outcome side of that, right? So this, the performance-based standards, and I'm not as talking about it in the same technical sense that engineer. I'm not an engineer by degree, but so the FAA's come a long way, and the agency has been able to progress and evolve, and it needs to continue to do so. I mean, things are moving at a rapid pace. You look at the work that SpaceX is doing, and that Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. Look, we're truly talking about. It feels like we're sending somebody to the ISS, International Space Station, every week. It's not quite that, right? But when you see the things happening in this space, you need government agencies that can keep pace with that, while absolutely maintaining a level of safety, right? I always say safety can always be used. It can be either used as a crutch or it can be used as a catalyst, right? I could, that's safety, stop the presses. Or I can say, what is it that we need to see? What gives us a level of comfort that the threshold of safety has been met? I want to see that continuous paradigm of learning and growing and evolving, right? Because in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years time, the world of aviation, even though that we've known for decades, it is evolving just that fast, right? We won't recognize it. People may not know it. You've got, 1 million plus drones in the national airspace today. right? We're moving to the, beyond visual line of sight operations. So think about the time when you've got literally 3, 5, 10 million drones out there, and you've got thousands of EVTOLs, and you've got 50,000 commercial flights, and not to withstand all of the military flights. So all of that needs to come together in a very modern system, right? That has kept pace with technology. And that's really the challenge of what we collectively do on the industry side and what the FAA and the federal government has to keep pace with.
It's easy. No big deal. Two hot topics for our listeners
Sure.
right now, Billy, and just curious to get your insight on them. If you've got an opinion on them, great, you can share them, but maybe just to open up our eyes into the process of how things can get changed. First, you've probably seen a lot of topic about pilot mental health issues going on. We've spoken to some groups that are getting some lobbying efforts together and like that. For many of us, it seems like, this is very obvious. So there needs to be a change or increased care, increased guidelines. If we could snap our fingers and make the change, we would. It'd be great.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Tell us a little bit about what has to go into getting change made.
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick story, right? So during the time I was with Qantas, that I think is just one of the greatest airlines in the world, and there are a lot of good airlines, the ones that I've been associated with, the U.S. airlines do an amazing level. But one of the things I really admired about the Qantas during my time there as an executive as well was they had one of their campaigns was, called "Are You Okay?" And over time, that ability to sit down and have a discussion, we're pilots. We're used to compartmentalizing. We're used to saying, something's going on at home. I'll put it in a box. Don't think about it. Something's going on at work. I'm in the middle of negotiation. All of these sort of things, these externals that hit us, right, and come at us, we said, put them in a box. And sometimes, the box just get full. So having that ability to say, how do we sit down and think about this in ways that is non-judgmental, right? Some airlines have peer assist groups. Some airlines, you want to make this about, especially when you've got you need a strong reporting culture, but you need an equally strong supporting culture that says when there's an issue and someone is, there's no there's no shaming going on. There is absolutely nothing there, but how can we support you if you're going through a tough period of time? Now, the trust we hold with the flying public has to be sacrosanct, right? So if I'm not okay, it is that ability as professionals to look at ourselves in the mirror every day and say, how do I feel, right? And then if I'm not, what should I do about that, right? If I'm not okay, I definitely should not be at the controls, right? Certainly not in a 121, 135, even a Part 91 operation, even my own private airplane if I'm just not up. But we need to ensure that we've got. So I think, the FAA Administrator Whitaker, they're thinking to what are the other things that we can do? It takes good reporting. It takes good reporting structure. It takes a really good peer assist, right, kind of process in place. It takes this combination of management and labor and the regulator and the medical community, the FAA's, the FAA flight surgeon, all of this working together to how do we put this supporting structure in place that first and foremost is do no harm to the flying public, right? We owe them that, absolutely, and make sure that we can support our fellow pilots and fellow crew members, and maybe not just pilots, right? We're talking about pilots at the moment, but it could be mechanics, it could be flight attendants, it could be, non-flying staff, right? Is that ability to have that kind of environment that you can provide that support in a non-punitive and in a very supportive way.
Yeah, and everything you've mentioned, it's unfortunately can't happen overnight, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a process.
It is a process, and you'd be surprised. I think a lot of, I would argue that a lot of the airlines have these kind of structures in place. During my time when I was at Airlines for America, I was working at the time with the FAA, and you have the aircrew training arc, you've got the pilot, there's lots of pilot mental health and the pilot fitness arc, right? You've got these ability to bring professionals together, bring labor, bring management, bring the FAA, bring the industry stakeholders together, and they say, okay, if we look at the totality, what gives us pause, what gives us concern? We've gotten pretty good about it, right? We're moved. If you look at this again, you go back to the safety continuum. We've moved from being, reactive to preventive, but we haven't quite gotten to predictive, right? But we're doing everything we can. Our ability to collect both qualitative and quantitative data has come a long, long way, right? SMS has brought us a long way. ASAP has brought us a long way. None of us have reached nirvana yet. So the goal is, okay, with everything we've got out there, is there anything there that's missing? And if so, is there things we need to shore up? And if there are things we need to continue to advance? Again, none of these can be static process, right? The science evolved, the data evolves, and we just got to keep pace with it.
That's well said. It's encouraging. Do you want to comment at all on the mandatory retirement age change? You have any thoughts on that?
Look, when I think about, I remember, let me just say this. I remember being, at American Airlines. When I joined American Airlines, the retirement age was 60, right? And then it was 62, then it was 65, right? You look through all of those. All I will say is this, right? That people are indeed fitter, and I think the thing is about what are the controls that you have in place. I don't know what the in outcome will be, and I won't posit an opinion here today. What I will say, no matter which side of this you're looking at, is all about having the right controls in place that says we can say at any given moment the system is safe, whether that be the system within an airline all the way up to our national system, right? And that we have the kind of controls that think about what we went to, right? Now, I have flown when I was 55, I flew with 60-year-olds, or when I was 60, I flew with people who were approaching 65, right? I've been there, and there wasn't ever a moment that I flew with someone I said, "Oh my goodness, that person shouldn't be flying." I was blessed, I will just say that, knock on wood, I was blessed in the course of my career of never having to say, "Oh my, that person should not be flying," right? And I think as we've talked about, whether it be, the kind of tests, whether they're cognitive, they're all kind of things, right? I'm not a professional on that, so I'm just opining as one pilot, right? One pilot, one voice here. I'll just say, as we think through it, let's think about it in a very purposeful way, very methodical way, right? Very data-driven way that says on the outside of that world, we could all say we're comfortable with how that decision came about, and we're comfortable that the flying public is protected.
That's a good point. All right. Last thing. Can we have story time with Billy? Do you have time to share an adventure maybe you had in your career to wrap things up?
I consider myself one of the blessed ones, for, a little, kid from born in Alabama, grew up making paper airplanes, and then being able to, over the arc of my career, which, spans 42 years of being a pilot now, right? I have been very, very fortunate to have flown with some of the best people, and I mean that to a person, right? I look back, I mentioned the time at American, the time at, the time at Qantas, the time when I was at WestJet in Calgary, Alberta. Canada is an incredibly beautiful place to be. I got a cold, but incredibly beautiful. But, I think a story is, I'm just going to go back to the FAA. So it was January of last year. And I was just about to I was supposed to be boarding a flight going to Mexico. We were looking at working with the authorities there to work on getting Mexico back to Category 1. And the Nolen thing hit, right?
I remember that.
And so I said, wow, okay. And of course, my assistant administrator for my communications chief, right, had a big team there. He says, Billy, you're probably not a good time for you to go to Mexico, right? Not that it had anything to do with Mexico, but what was instructive about that incident was the way and how quickly the men and women at the FAA really, dug in and say, how do we go figure this out, right? The FAA, we don't think about it so much because when you're out there flying, you're not thinking so much about all of the systems that support you, right? Of going from paper strips to, Datacom, all these kind of things. And what I would say, and what I started, the FAA is kind of a system of systems with some of these, sometimes, to be quite honest, feel like they're cobbled together, right? You don't, it's sort of like you got a bit of Frankenstein, and I don't say that in a very, I'm not saying that in a pejorative sense, but we've managed to make it work. And what you realize is that you want the agency to continue to evolve, and it's done a really incredible job of modernizing. But this is the piece that, I'm going to just argue that Congress on both sides has to own. You want what is your premier agency that oversees, 50,000 flights a day, right? You want it to have the very best, and it needs funding to make that happen. You go through this cycle of every 5 years, and sometimes you feel like you're never in control of your destiny. For me, the teachable moment was just how much these public servants, right, says, let's go do it, let's go do it, let's go do it. And there were, some of those were 15, 16-hour longer days, and for some it was even longer, making it all work.
Excellent. All right. Billy Nolen, we certainly appreciate your time. I think he just promised you new NOTAMs by Christmas.
Yeah.
I think that's what. Is that
no,
what
they're not even. No, you guys are so out of touch. It's no tack.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't forget.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right.
We appreciate it, Billy. It's very interesting to get some of your insight on
all this.
On all this.
We're going to be looking to see. We're going to be following Archer very closely. I'm excited.
Here's the thing. What I see happening is once these business jet owners see these things, you'll be like, hey, what's it going to take for you to fly that thing?
I know.
I got it. Now, I'll have one of these in my garage. You drive to my house.
I know.
We'll fly to the airport, land next to the jet, and then you just walk over, grab our bags, of course, and put them on the jet, and then we'll go fly. Yeah. It's perfect.
All right. Thanks, Billy. Jeez. Now, more work for me. All right, Max. So have you pre-ordered yet your Archer Midnight? Did you?
I'm waiting for the experimental one to come out that's affordable that you just quickly, slam the halves of the composite shells together and mount the motors and install the wiring harness.
How sick would it be just to go up? One of the main things I want to do after talking to Billy is I want to hear one and really actually see. I know, because they said it's 100 times quieter, but
that's all I can think about every time I see. Like you said, my kid fly this newest generation drone. I'm like, how fun would that be to have one of those things?
So we kind of asked him. We didn't
that you can sit in, that you can fly.
We kind of asked him, but we didn't get a super clear answer. What do you just in your mind? What do you think? Do you think you'll be a flight instructor and then you're going to go in and fly? Do you feel like the air taxi's a step after instructor?
I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I was getting from that's the thing. But here's the thing. I don't think it's going to be very long-lived.
Right.
I mean, at some point, they're going to be
a 10-year window of pilots, and then all of a sudden it's autonomous. Yeah. And then
what they're going to do, you have to think that they have the technology already built in, right? And what's going to happen is they're going to have guys, pilots, and they're going to fly them around, and then all of a sudden it's going to be like Waymo.
Yeah.
Where the pilot's there.
Yeah.
And can intervene.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, but is doing nothing. And then they'll be like, whoa. Now think about this. Would you rather take more bags and people or have this pilot guy here?
It's showered in 3 days.
Obviously, that's the evolution of how this is.
You would think
so.
But interesting in the short term, airlines have to look. Okay, well, what kind of powered lift time do you have, and how do we calculate? You know what I mean? In your experience. So, I don't know. So let me ask you this: do you feel like you've got a 14-year-old son? You think he could be flying one? Could that be a job? Yeah. Is that your job that you're 21 and you're flying these? Are you good proficient with a drone? Is that the interview?
Who knows, dude?
They show up and they're
this is all.
I know. It's so interesting.
New stuff.
It's fascinating.
It's wild though.
I tell you though, I've seen them for a while. I do want to fly one.
Oh.
I really want to fly one.
It looks incredible. Ever since I saw that black fly one, the one place one, I've wanted that thing since it showed up.
Okay. All right. Listen, if you'd like to give Max and I an opportunity to fly your electric EVTOL, we're ready.
Sounds like the simulators are out there, though.
I'm ready.
I'd take that right now.
Yeah, do a little sim time. We're ready to go. We're on the bleeding edge of the powered lift spectrum. So, hope you guys enjoyed this interview with Billy Nolen. You remember, in 2024, we've split the episodes up, so we're doing the mailbag and flight advice in next week's episode. So tune back in for that. And until then, remember,
flexibility is the key to air power
and electric-powered lift.
and maintaining the FAA's very complex systems.
That's right. We'll see you guys next week.
That's it.